Yeah, time management, I think, is the key, and compromising. What are you willing to compromise on? If that's a case of not going out to the pub with your friends, if it's getting to bed a couple of hours earlier to improve your recovery, or to liberate that time not spent in the pub or watching television, to get up earlier in the morning to go out training. That could be one aspect. Yeah, it's very easy to just slump down in front of the telly and watch a film or something. Would that time be better spent doing something else?
Right.
So I listen to a lot of podcasts. It's very rare that I'm running without listening to a podcast. So to a certain extent, I'm hitting two birds with one stone. I'm getting my entertainment at the same time as my running.
He once got very angry when a journalist in Hyderabad wrote about him and called him a fitness freak. So I won't call him a fitness freak, but he's an amazing athlete. He can be super funny and is a super nice guy. But he is one of those annoying guys who is great at any sport he picks up and trashes everyone. He ran cross country at school and university and then moved more into mountain biking for a few years. Then, sport took a backseat for a few years while traveling overseas with work until he got more into cycling in India. He got into triathlon and participated in a couple of half and full Ironman races. He discovered that while swimming was certainly not a strength, running seemed to be his stronghold. He ran his first marathon in Hyderabad in 2012 and finished on podium with a sub-3 finish. After nearly 5 years traveling on work, he returned to UK in 2015 and started running with more focus and joined an athletics club called Hercules Wimbledon. That's where things started looking much better. He raced over all kinds of distances and terrains from 800 meters to 126 kilometers, track, road, cross country, with everything, and with marathon being his most successful distance. PB has dropped over 13 marathons to 2 hours 23 minutes, finishing 10th fastest 10th amateur at London Marathon in 2019. He recently started venturing into ultra marathon distance with first outing as a race of 57 kilometers called Jubilee Greenway, knocking off 59 minutes of the previous course record at an insane pace of 3 minutes 54 per kilometer. Then he went on to break the course record for 126 kilometer Capital Ring route and completed it in 10 hours 14 minutes at a pace of 5 minutes and 3 seconds per kilometer. He is married and he has 2 children aged 4 and 1. He juggles training with family duties and work within the engineering sector. His name is Richard McDowell. Welcome to the Working Athlete Podcast, Richard. It's such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Venki. Good to see you again.
Thank you. I am tired from just reading all your accomplishments here.
Well, when you summarize it like that, it's obviously they took a few years to accumulate those experiences.
Definitely. And I would like to explore those years of journey in this podcast. So the first time I met you was in a HBC, a Hyderabad Bicycling Club ride in Hyderabad back in 2010. I came back from an year in US and we did quite a few rides together before I moved to Bangalore. So Then after that, we more or less met only during the races when you came down to BBCH races here in Bangalore, or the tour of Nilgiris in 2012. And whenever I came to Hyderabad for races and stuff like that. So before we get to your trip to India, let us start with your early years in sport. Um, you were running cross country races in school, right? What type of races were they, and how did you get started there?
I'm not sure exactly how old I was, but yeah, secondary school cross country running was just a fun thing that that happened. I can't remember how long the races were in terms of distance or time. Obviously, this was long before GPS watches, or I don't even know if I was recording any results or anything. But yeah, it was a good way of pushing myself. I didn't really do all that much training, but and I was never particularly good. I seem to remember I went to the National Cross Country Championships as a junior in the west of Scotland, and came 100 and something or other. And it was oh yeah, I'm not very fast here. But I quite enjoyed it. I used to go out running with my dad on a Sunday morning, bright and early. I think it was a Sunday morning. It was a Saturday morning. We used to go and do maybe 5 miles, sometimes a little bit longer. I used to enjoy it, and I continued cross country through secondary school, and then when I went to university, ran cross country there as well. So it was a bit more competitive, slightly longer distances. I don't think a secondary school they put you over particularly challenging courses, but yes, there was it was good fun. It was good fun, partly for the social aspect as well.
Yeah. So was your dad good runner? You mentioned.
Yeah, he started running probably late 40s, early 50s. I'm not sure what the trigger was for that, but he wasn't crazy fast, but he could plod along for a decent length of time. He was certainly, I couldn't match him on long runs when I was a youngster. And he did I think his fastest marathon is about 3:35 in Edinburgh, as possibly was over 60 when he did that. He claims that the winds changed direction at one point, so either tailwind on the way out and tailwind on the way back. This was a freak fast result. Yes, he's certainly pretty good for an old geezer.
He was over 60 when he did that, is it? Nice.
I think so, yes. He's 70, 74 now, I think. So yeah, early to mid 60s, I think, for his 3:35 marathon personal best.
Awesome. So that's how you got started in running. But how did mountain biking start, though?
Well, I'd always been a cyclist as well. As a family, we used to cycle around as means of transport, and as a teenager, I started mountain biking. So this was a fun thing I used to do with my friends. When I studied university, I joined the cycling club as well as the running club. I suppose mountain biking is something you do a bit more for fun rather than just for competition, whereas running, it was mainly just about the racing. There was a social aspect, but mountain biking was more of a thing that we would go out for fun. If there were some races, yeah, and that was great. But we were just mainly just having fun riding our bikes. And I gradually sort of transitioned away a little bit from cross country running, went more into cycling, mountain biking.
Mountain biking, you did, if I remember correctly, you did quite a bit of downhilling as well, right?
I was utterly appalling at downhilling, but yes, I used to enjoy falling off down steep slopes. Occasionally I would go fast. It was, I seem to remember one year it was, me and a friend, we used to compete for who was going to be last place typically, but I was terrible. was terrible. I just didn't have the coordination and coordination skill and possibly courage to be quick as a downhiller. But it didn't stop me having fun occasionally and hurting myself.
Okay, it's hard to imagine you being poor at anything, but I'll take your word
there are
for
lots
it.
of things I'm bad at. Don't worry. Anything that requires coordination, I'm pretty poor at. Racket sports are certainly not my forte.
All right. So, but how when did all that take a backseat? Did when you got into job or something?
So my first job out of university was actually at a cycling component factory, company. So I was designing parts for bicycles, which was great fun. I got to actually manage a mountain bike team very badly, but I used to go around representing the company at lots of events. It was a dream job. It was fantastic. But then I got a new job in engineering in the steel industry, and that sent me abroad, various places, and some of which were more predisposed towards sport than others. So I made friends in various different places through cycling. So I remember one of my best friends in Serbia I met out while I was just cycling, and he saw me, and he was very surprised to find that I was British, just riding around some mountains in the middle of Serbia. But yes, other places when I was commuting to Italy. Didn't have quite so much time to do towards sport.
When was
Serbia? It's been something. Serbia was about 16 years ago now. So what was that? 2004, something like that. 2003, okay. 2004. And so I was there for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And Italy as well?
So I was Serbia, Australia, Brazil, Italy, Abu Dhabi. Was I in Abu Dhabi before or after Italy? I can't remember. And then ended up in India.
Wow.
In 2010.
Were you riding in Italy and stuff? In Italy and Australia and stuff?
No, I didn't take a bike to Australia, and Italy I was only commuting during the week, so I was only there Monday, Friday. So I didn't have anything out there. I didn't really have any free time to do anything. So no, I haven't done any cycling in Italy.
When did you land up in India though?
So that was early 2010. I came out to Hyderabad to set up an office in Hyderabad, engineering office, and I brought a bicycle with me.
You were you just commuting to begin with, or did you find the riding company right away when you were in Hyderabad?
So I wasn't commuting by bicycle, but I found online the great Hyderabad Bicycling Club.
Yeah.
So I used to meet up with them for rides early on Saturday, Sunday mornings through the cantonment. I think lots of interesting characters. Yeah. For rides, made lots of friends, riding around, just having fun, exploring the area. It was funny through cycling. I got to know geographically my way around Hyderabad very, very quickly, and I had friends who were driven everywhere, who had no concept of where places were. They just knew, it takes 20 minutes to get there or half an hour to get there. So but they had no idea how to actually get there. Just sat in the back of an Innova. So it was a really good way to get to know the city.
Definitely. Who were some of the riders that you rode with at that time?
Oh, I'm struggling to remember some names now. Obviously, you were one of them.
Yeah.
Not so much on the cantonment rides, but some of the longer rides out towards the reservoirs.
Yeah.
Matt. There was a guy. Yes, Matt.
Sunil and
There was Sunil. There was a Air Force guy as well. I'm struggling to remember his name. Who was the real character, in those sort of rides as well. No, a good number of people. Yeah, a good friendly community.
yeah, definitely. Those were there used to be a meetup forum there. I think for where we used to plan the rides and get together and ride there. Quite a lot of fun. I used to join their rides when I started riding in 2008, and through 2009 and middle of 2009 I kind of went to US for work, and when I came back end of August 2010, that's when I met you, and we did quite a few rides together during the few weekends that we had. It was quite fun. I was riding my Bulldog, I think, the fixed gear bike, and you were on your trek. And
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember you as someone who was quite good at bunny hopping and going over rough terrain without slowing down.
I had very little mechanical sympathy for that bike, so yes, I used to abuse it horribly. I had some pretty chunky tires on it, so I could just thrash it through all sorts of things.
Yeah. So you, when in India, you did not just stick to riding in Hyderabad, but you also participated in quite a few events, right? MTB Himalaya being one of them, and TFN being another. How was MTB Himalaya experience, given your MTB background?
That was fantastic fun, and it was in a part of the country I didn't know at all. Starting in Shimla in the foothills of the Himalayas. It's funny. I can't remember what I'd done, but I'd hurt my wrist, and I was wearing a wrist brace. And MTB Himalaya is 1 week, around about 1 week, and you're not doing crazy mileage, but there are competitive sections every day, maybe a couple of competitive sections. These are timed, so you go off like a time trial, sometimes in little groups. I started with a view of just having fun, not really attacking these at all. But then the gun went for the first competitive section, and I changed my mind, and I went for it, and yeah, the wrist didn't prove to be too much of an impediment, which was nice. It was nice to get a mixture of competitive and relaxed, and some of this terrain was very much hike a bike, carrying a bike up big sort of rock screen things. But no, it was a fantastic experience with some all fully catered, so wonderful food being laid on, nice hot lunches here and there, camping. Yeah, it was great fun.
Awesome. So was it like, did you do well in the competitive sections?
I didn't do too badly. There were two Nepalese guys who proved to be pretty quick, but I gave them a decent run for their money. I think me and Ironman, we switched places a few times. So I was pretty close on his heels, but yeah, I came third overall. I think there was one section which was a downhill section, and that was the only full downhill. So I won that segment. So I was the best downhiller of MTB Himalaya, which made me laugh really, given how bad generally I am at downhilling. Yeah, it was good fun. It was good fun.
Awesome. And you did the TFN in 2012. How was that experience?
Yeah, so that was only a couple of months after MTB. I had a pretty busy few months then, I think. So yeah, it was September, I think, for MTB Himalaya, and December for TFN, Tour of Nilgiris. remember a similar sort of format, but on roads. So you're doing maybe 100 kilometers a day with, so generally one competitive section a day,
Yeah,
maybe a couple.
one competitive section a day.
Yeah, either flat or uphill.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day my Garmin just completely froze up, just completely died. This was my original Garmin Edge 500. So for the first competitive section, I was riding entirely blind. I didn't know how fast I was going, how far I had to go. So I wasn't particularly well paced on that. And then I borrowed yours for the rest of the week.
Yeah, I remember.
And I think we share some Strava KOMs as a result. Not quite sure how that's happened.
I'm not sure as well, but I was quite happy to lend my Garmin because I wasn't competing that year.
You were there as a resident blogger, weren't you?
Yes, I was there as a blogger, and I was quite enjoying seeing all of you guys suffering and blogging about it. I remember on the flat sections that year, Naveen John was there. The Lokesh was there. Lokesh Narasimhachar. So I think the specialized Kinkini team.
Kinkini, yes.
Yeah, Kinkini specialized team was newly formed, and that year they took part in TFN, and they were your main competitors in during that time, right?
Yes. So I think after the first segment, I'm not sure where I was, at mid pack or something on the first, but and I sort of managed to claw myself slowly up the leaderboards, and yeah, Naveen John is. I'm not sure when he became national champion, but he's got reasonable pair of legs on him. Naveen and Loki, yeah, I was just behind them.
Yeah, he was fast on the flat sections, but whenever the road veered up, I think you were doing better than on the flat sections. And
I think I was closer. I'm not sure I was quicker than him on any of the climbs, but I was certainly a lot closer. Okay,
very close. Yeah.
Heels.
Very close. I think on Wooty climb, which was the last but one competitive section, you were a few seconds quicker than him. Loki was
I? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it is like 10-15 seconds or so faster than him, and Loki was a minute or so faster than both of you. And he took the win, and Naveen John was second, and you were third overall. So that was quite a fun trip. So how was TFN experience overall?
It was fantastic. Seeing the different vegetation growing at different levels, so climbing up through the coffee, and then into the tea, seeing these tea plantations mapped out like sort of patchwork around. No, it was fantastic way seeing some real contrasting terrain, coming out from Bangalore and getting some nice clean air up in Ooty, and then dropping down. Is it Metapalium?
Yeah.
The descent down from Ooty down to Metapalium was fantastic.
That was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets about 15 degrees warmer as you descend. No, that was a great week.
Awesome. So you enjoyed riding and participating in all these cycling events. How? What about running? How did you get into running and Hyderabad runners?
I obviously knew Sunil Menon from cycling, and when I think that was a new cycling club was born, the Hyderabad Cycling Club, the HCC, was more into a competitive aspect, and I think Sunil was one of the main sort of driving forces in trying to bring competitive cycling to Hyderabad, and we used to ride a lot together. And then he was going to do Ironman 70.3 in Sri Lanka, and he wanted someone to train with. And I had plenty of time, and I was more than willing to be his training partner. So he took me out for a run one Sunday morning. I think he was expecting me to struggle somewhat, and he was a bit surprised when I didn't. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I seem to be able to run again. I can just about remember how to do this." So yeah, running came back pretty naturally. The swimming, on the other hand, was I've never been a great swimmer. I'm pretty much devoid of muscles above the waist. Not particularly well coordinated. When I was taught to swim at primary school, it was, well, here's how not to drown in this style, and here's not to drown in this style. It was never aimed at competitive fast swimming. It was just floundering around in a pool without drowning, and that's pretty much how I've continued. So I used to get down the pool and try and work on different things, but certainly not my strength. But it was enjoyable.
Yeah, that's how you got back to running and actually started triathlon as well.
Yes, so it was funny. I expected cycling to be my strength in triathlon. It certainly wasn't going to be swimming.
Mm-hmm.
But then in my first race, I think I realised that fairly soon after my first race, I realised that running was actually my strength. I was actually a better runner than I was a cyclist.
Okay, so was it? Do you think was it because you had been running since you were a kid?
It might be that, or it might just be the fact that I'm a skinny little runt. The powerful, the fast cyclists generally have slightly bigger thighs, slightly more powerfully built. I'm quite slender, so I think that makes a difference.
So you focused more on running, and you participated in a marathon as well. When was this? Your first marathon?
I think that was August 2012. So that was in that fairly intensive period. So I think I did my first marathon fairly soon before MTB Himalaya. So August I think was my first marathon in Hyderabad.
Was it the first Hyderabad marathon, or was it?
It was the second.
Second,
I think.
So it started in 2011, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
So it was still fairly much in its infancy, and it was a relatively small event.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and it was organised by the Hyderabad runners, so I knew all the organisers. It was a very friendly event. It started 10 minutes jog away from my apartment, so it was very, very convenient.
Yeah. How was that first marathon experience?
It was interesting. I'd set myself a random goal time of 3 hours. That seemed like a realistic target. I'd run 2/3 of the distance in 2 hours in training, thinking, this is fairly manageable. I think this is a reasonable, relatively conservative target. I think that's one thing I've been fairly good at running, setting targets just a little bit quicker than I've done before, and managing to achieve them and just gradually chip away. Obviously, first event, it's a slightly different kettle of fish. You don't know what you're going to manage. So I knew that to run under 3 hours, I needed to run about 4:16 per kilometre, something like that. So I set off at 4:16 per kilometre, and I'd managed to lag my way into the elite start. I don't think there were a huge number of people anticipating being super fast, so I started at the very front, and a pack just disappeared away. I was like, well, that's fine. I've no idea what they're going to run. I'm not really racing. I'm just here to run the speed which I think I'm capable of. So it started with a lap of Hussein Sagar in the dark, and then climbed its way through Banjara Hills and edged out towards the stadium where I used to swim and train regularly. And it's a fairly undulating course. It's overall net uphill.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just cruising along, averaging my pace, and started overtaking people. And so one person here, one person there, a couple of people here, and there's a half marathon happens at the same time, who set off an hour later.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't do the first loop, and they don't do the lap at the end. They just go point to point. So I came into the stadiums at bang on schedule. Lots of half marathon runners were finishing at the same time, and I crossed the line in 2:59:36, if I remember correctly. Thinking, yeah, okay, job done. Yep, achieved my objective. And it wasn't until they were announcing the times of the winners on the podium that I realised I'd actually come second, which was a bit of a surprise. I think the winner was 2:52 something, but to come second in my first marathon in 2:59 was obviously not the most competitive in the world. I think the following year, I think the win was 2:32, so it attracted a slightly higher caliber subsequent years.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it was good fun. It was good fun.
Yeah, it was an auspicious start, I think, for running. Although because it was in the initial years, not in a lot of competition, but I think it got more and more competitive, as you say, in the following years. But still, managing and ending up on podium on the first marathon was a sign of things to come, I guess.
Yeah, not something I've achieved much subsequently, but possibly I've done slightly higher profile events.
Yes. So I remember seeing a pic of you running with a cast, your arm in a cast, and the holes drilled into that cast. What was that?
So it was funny. I'd gone to a bike shop in Hyderabad, and I was chatting with the owner, and he remarked on the fact that I wasn't wearing gloves, and I said, "Right, it's okay. I don't fall off my road bike. I only fall off my mountain bike." Sure enough, 10 minutes later, cycling home, I had some contact with a motorbike doing something which I hadn't expected, and yes, I don't think my hand was big, but yeah, I broke a bone in my wrist, so I ended up with a cast on my arm, and the first cast was far too tight, so I was incredibly painful after a few days. So I went back to the hospital, had another cast put on, and I thought, well, okay, I'm not cycling. I don't want to lose all this fitness. I had to have this on for 3 weeks or something. It wasn't a particularly bad break. It wasn't a bone that was particularly highly stressed, but it needed to set properly. I thought, well, I want to continue exercising, and casts are completely watertight, and so any sweat that I was going to generate was just going to stay there. And I can imagine this cast getting pretty smelly and horrible.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, let's drill some ventilation holes. So I got a little Dremel type thing and drilled a few hundred holes in it. The slight risk being that if I went too far with the Dremel, I would have drilled into my arm. It's possibly not particularly easy to service a wound that was underneath the cast. But I managed not to injure myself, and it wasn't as if I could feel the breeze through these holes, but it would certainly dry out a lot more quickly. And I was still running, so instead of cycling to work, I was running to work. And this cast did get quite smelly, but I could still run. Obviously, I couldn't swim. I couldn't really hold my handlebars, so I couldn't cycle. I couldn't really use the brakes. I could hold my bars, but I couldn't really brake, so I wasn't safe on a bike. So but I continued running. But I had an entry and flights for a duathlon in Delhi.
Mm.
I thought, well, I've got the flight, so I may as well see what happens. It's should be a fairly quiet course. So I did compete in a duathlon with a broken arm cast on my arm in Delhi, and did all right there. It's funny, there were various different lengths of events, and I was doing the long. Can't remember how long it was, but it was I think it was a 10k run, then a 40k bike, then a 5k run. Yeah, that's sort of Olympic distance duathlon type format.
Right.
There were shorter ones. There was also people doing it as a relay, and I think I beat all the relay competitors as well as everyone else. That was including managing to fall off my bike going over a speed bump. There was a speed bump at the same point as a U-turn at one point of the course, and I fell off and got all mucky. But so it didn't stop me doing too much apart from swimming. And I couldn't get much worse at swimming, so it wasn't.
Wow. So because you had the cast on the hand, you were not able to hold the bike properly, and when you went over the speed bump, that's where you lost balance and fell off. Is it?
Yeah, I couldn't really hold on properly.
But you still won that event.
Yes. Again, it was a fairly small event. There weren't many international people flying in from all over. So, but it was a low key fun event. It
was about around the time when events were starting in various places like this, right? Delhi, Hyderabad, Delhi, Bangalore had BBCH starting and all that. So it was fairly nascent, and more recently we've seen a slightly better competition with people flying in and stuff like that. Last year in Goa, I think 70.3 event saw some participation, but not too competitive yet. But I think it'll get there. But great, you were one of those guys who were here when things were starting out. So it was good. So talking about triathlon, you did 2 70.3 events and 2 Ironmans, right?
Yes. So my first 70.3, which was my first triathlon, was in that busy period. So it was first marathon, then MTB Himalaya, then Metaman Bintan.
Wow.
So this was a 70.3 in Indonesia, an island just a short ferry journey from Singapore.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful water, nice scenery. It was pretty warm and humid, which I think favoured people who'd trained in warm and humid places. Also the skinnier athletes. Yeah. So I think I was fairly well prepared in terms of heat adaptation for that. I remember there was a full Ironman and a half Ironman happening at the same time. The full distance started in the morning, and the half started at lunchtime, so that the running would miss the midday heat. And that was a fun event. But yes, the conditions caught some people out. There was an Australian pro who was pulled off the run course with heat exhaustion.
Wow.
So yeah, it was interesting conditions.
Yeah, the Bintan. I've been to Bintan a couple of times for Tour de Bintan event, and our time trial started in midday as well, around 2:33. Obviously, various people, various age groups start at different times, and starting at midday heat, it's incredibly humid, and riding there, I mean, at least I lost about 20% 30% of power. It was like so exhausting. But how did you do?
As ever, I'd set myself a random time goal. I'd set myself a 5-hour goal. This seemed to be a sensible round number to aim for my first half Ironman. And what you say, the challenges with riding in the heat. Obviously, when you're riding, you've got a lot of airflow going over you. When you're running, you're obviously going a lot more slowly. So the heat makes much more impact.
Correct.
Because you don't have so much airflow and wind chill to cool you down.
Yeah.
But my swim was as pathetic as expected. I think I swam about 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I came out the water 20 minutes behind the guy who won my age group.
Wow.
But interestingly, we had virtually identical bike and run splits. So that 20 minutes stayed static. Now I ran slightly slower than I quickly realized that my run, I was fairly much on my 5-hour target with my swim and my bike. I think my transitions were fractionally slower, but I realized fairly soon that I wouldn't be able to sustain my run speed. Mm-hmm. And I needed to reevaluate my pace. Otherwise I was going to end up in a bit of a mess. So I missed my goal time by 6 minutes, I think. But was good enough to come third in my age group, which was, so I went away with a little bit of
nice. So 5 hours 6 minutes, is it?
I think so, yes.
Wow. And podium on your first 70.3, which is not bad considering it is not Delhi or Hyderabad, right?
Yes, so there was, Singapore has some fairly strong athletes, and there were internationals as well. There were Aussies and all sorts. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a fairly relaxed affair. It was friendly. It wasn't as corporate as an Ironman type event. So it was a good introduction to the distance.
Nice. So what were your subsequent events? You did one in Phuket, and was that 70.3 as well? This
was actually just, I think, the week before TFN, maybe 2 weeks before. So I went out to Thailand for their triathlon festival. Mm-hmm. So they have in Phuket, they have a slightly, I think they call it modified Olympic distance event one weekend, and then the 70.3 the following. Mm-hmm. So I did two triathlons that trip. First one, I was feeling a little bit under the weather, so I didn't do particularly well. Mm-hmm. But in the second one, I was 12th in my age group, and it was fairly. There were some quick guys. Yeah. And that was good enough to actually qualify me for the 70.3 World Championships in Vegas.
Wow.
The following year.
Wow.
So that was a chance I was quite keen to take advantage of.
Did you go there?
Yes, so I went there in 2013. Yes, that was an interesting experience. Yes.
Yeah. How was that experience?
It was fun. I had my traditionally a terrible swim. I was wearing a brand new speed suit, which I'd never worn before, never tried on before. Uh-huh. Turned out to be a bit tight. I felt like I was my breathing was horribly constricted. So I think I sort of unzipped it for the second half of the swim and improved slightly. Mm. And then, but it was very wet on the bike. And I was using Di2, on my tri bike,
Right.
and I tacked it all up with soldering in extra switches here and there, and the switches I'd used weren't quite as waterproof as I'd thought. So partway through the bike, I lost my rear shifting. So I was stuck in the 11-tooth sprocket.
Wow.
So I had a choice of 5311 or 4211, I think. Neither ideal for an undulating bike with a fairly steep ramp towards the end. So my legs were pretty shot, and I knew I was going to have a terrible race. I did actually stop to help a woman with a puncture during the bike leg. So I knew that my race was going terribly.
Okay.
I had a reasonable run, but no, I didn't exactly feature on the podium there. But it was a fun experience. Got a massive medal about the size of a dinner plate. Well, everyone got one of those.
Yeah.
But
Participation medal.
It was fun. Yes.
You did a couple of full Ironmans as well. How was the transition from 70.3 to full distance?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. So a 70.3, you're finished by lunchtime when you recover by tea time. Mm-hmm. It's a slight exaggeration, but and you don't need to take your training particularly hard. I was done in 5 hours, and a lot of that isn't at a mega intensity level, but also it's the event where you can actually push yourself a bit, because it's shorter. You feel like you can race it to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. Whereas a full Ironman, where it's double the distance, you might be going for 12 hours. It's a full day, and it's something which you need to take quite seriously. If you haven't trained properly, you will struggle. You may struggle to finish, and you'll take a little while to recover from. And looking back, I could have trained a lot harder, and I never really fulfilled what I think my potential would be in full Ironman. But it's a box I've ticked a couple of times. I doubt I'll tick it again, but it was a fun experience. Fun experience at the time.
Right. What was your best time there?
So I did Ironman Zurich in the summer of 2013, mm-hmm. and I went in with a goal time of 10 hours, mm-hmm. and I missed it by over an hour.
Okay, 11 hours something.
So I did 11:06 in my first Ironman. Partly, some of that was down to the fact that it was a non-wetsuit swim. Mm-hmm. So I was expecting to have the advantage of the buoyancy of a wetsuit to help me through the swim. So I was probably maybe 10 minutes slower in the swim as well, because it was uncharacteristically warm that year. Mm-hmm. So Lake Zurich wasn't cold enough to warrant a wetsuit.
Okay. So
I was very slow on the swim. The bike went okay, although I had a power meter on my bike, and I had some chain suck just starting the first climb on the first lap, and that ripped the magnet off my crankset. So I didn't have any cadence data, so I had no power numbers. So it was a bit disappointing to have a power meter but no actual information to help with pacing on my ride. Right. And it was hot. There was the run. I started off at the run speed that I was wanting to go at, and I quickly realised that no, I needed to back it off quite a lot. At one point, I jumped into a fountain to cool off. Wow. On the run. The run was a bit of a slog. Yeah. But I was looking back. It was quite fun. I did end up on a drip afterwards because I was just trying to rehydrate afterwards, and I would drink, I would puke, I would drink, I would puke, and I realised that if I shortcutted the digestive system, I recover a bit more quickly. So yes, I was ended up with a litre of saline intravenous to try and get me back on the path to recovery.
Wow.
So yes, it was a learning experience.
Definitely. So for those who the newer generation who don't understand magnets on the crank to give cadence and the power, these older generation quarks had these magnets on the crank, so that it was not accelerometers. I think it was morely the magnets giving the cadence and
correct. So there was the strain gauges in the spider.
Yeah.
So it was power is force times speed. Yeah. So it had the force from the strain gauges, but it needed the magnet to have the cadence data.
Right. So later on, they started using the accelerometers to kind of give the cadence and the strain gauges using the power meters and stuff. Good. So that was an interesting experience. But you also did another Ironman, and was it in 2014 that?
2014, yes, that was in South Africa.
No, at this time you were in Assam. You moved from Hyderabad to not Assam, Orissa, and were training there, right?
Yeah, so I had 4 years in Hyderabad. Set up the office and the various projects that I was based out of Hyderabad for, and then they were building a plant in Orissa. Mm-hmm. So I moved there for a year, and it wasn't quite such a great training base, if I'm to put it bluntly. It was a bit of an industrial backwater. Wherever you looked, you could see about half a dozen steelworks. The roads around there were iron ore trucks thundering up and down the roads that really didn't care who else was trying to use these roads at the same time. You would be cycling down the road, there would be a truck thundering towards you with a massive plume of dust erupting from behind it. And then out of this dust, a second truck would appear, overtaking, with zero visibility of what it could see, with the general sort of attitude of, I'm the biggest thing on the road, everyone else can make way for me, regardless of where I am. So I had one memorable ride where I came home with the design being painted, so the vents in my helmet, the black stripes around my glasses and things, and yes, quickly realised that training on the roads was certainly a lot of the roads wasn't a particularly fun experience or safe.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing that one picture of you training there, and the entire face was black with dust, and this what was that? The helmet. You could see the helmet stripes and everything. Yeah.
Where the vents were. So there was a corresponding black section for a vent. Yeah. I had nowhere to swim. The pool, the hotel I was staying in did have a pool, but no water in. Mm-hmm. Actually, summertime they did have water, but it was green and it was just basically a big mosquito fest. Obviously, no one to train with.
Yeah.
And when I was out running, I would get harassed by locals. So yes, it wasn't the ideal training environment to excel in an Ironman.
But you did what you could, including trying to simulate swimming by what was that device where you indoor pool kind of thing?
So I'd fashioned together an indoor swimming device from a cross-country ski trainer and a weights bench. Wow. So it was some basically just work the arms. So you were just hauling on these ropes with alternate arms while lying down. and it was intensely boring. I probably spent longer making it than I actually spent using it. It was just mind-numbingly boring.
Yeah.
And also the same. I had my tri bike was on my turbo in my hotel room, and this was, I'm not sure if Zwift was around then, but
No, I don't
there
think
might
so.
have been some applications to make the whole experience slightly less monotonous, but I didn't have any of those. It's just a question of just trying to watch some. I think my best session was watching a Paris-Roubaix from the previous year while on my turbo. But yeah, so no swimming. Running was interesting, and cycling was fairly handicapped as well. So I was half an hour slower on my second Ironman than my first.
Yeah, not bad considering you were hardly able to train, but you hung in there and got it done, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, it was a fun experience nonetheless, and
Yeah.
I didn't require any medical assistance afterwards. So that was a win.
That was good. Yeah, no more drips, intravenous drips.
Yeah.
That's good. So you moved back to the UK in 2015, and that kind of had a positive effect on your running, I think. How did it help going back home?
Well, I certainly didn't do any more triathlon. That was So after a bit of sort of reacclimatization back to being in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
I started going to parkrun. I'm not sure if all of your listeners are familiar with parkrun. I don't think it operates in India, but it's a free timed 5 kilometer run,
Mm-hmm.
which happens every Saturday morning in lots and lots of parks, all in lots of parts of the world. Unfortunately, currently on hold because of Corona.
Yeah.
But I went along to my local park run on Wimbledon Common, and I think I came fourth in my first park run.
Wow.
And I'm not sure if it was. I think it was my third park run. I think I was recruited to Hercules Wimbledon. One of the main stalwarts of the club handed me his card and encouraged me to come down and start training at the track with the club, and never look back.
Awesome. So the park run, the first park run you did, where you ended up third. How much was the time there?
I was fourth in a time of 18 minutes 26 seconds.
Wow. And that kind of caught attention of some of the guys in the Hercules Wimbledon, and they invited you to be part of the club.
Yes, I'm not sure if it was that week, but it was a couple of weeks later. I came second in 1801.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might have been that week when Pete gave me his card.
But you also did a run in 16 minutes with your son in the trailer. Was that some sort of record?
One of the things about becoming a father was integrating training with childcare.
Yeah.
And running with a buggy is a fantastic way of cutting two birds with one stone. So I was looking after my son. It was providing a little bit of extra resistance training, giving my wife a bit of time to herself. Often he would just go to sleep, and so I used to do park run. I used to go out with training runs with the club. It was fantastic. So I think I'm not sure what my fastest park run with a buggy was, but I thought I might try and set a record on a road course. So I applied to Guinness. There wasn't a record, so I applied to set a new record, and I did all the paperwork and bits and pieces, and I ran, I think it was 16 minutes 10 seconds on a 2-lap road course with Wilfred. I pumped the tyres up hard, tried to optimize everything. A couple of GoPros to record it for posterity, for evidence purposes. Unfortunately, Guinness turned around and said, 5 kilometers is a recreational distance. There's no challenge. There's no challenge in that. Go and run a half marathon or a marathon with him and come back once you've set a new record then. Which I thought was a little bit, I think I might have said a snotty reply back, suggesting that would invalidates the vast majority of Olympic running distances.
I know, but that is excellent. The way you integrate childcare and training. So does he? How often does he accompany you on your runs?
He doesn't, and he doesn't anymore. He's too big now.
Yeah.
I've upgraded to a smaller model. We used to regularly go out. I think the longest we did was a 20 mile run.
Wow.
I used to run up to meet the club training on a Sunday morning. We would run round Wimbledon Common and Richmond Park. I think this would sometimes raise a few eyebrows, seeing a pack of guys running at a decent pace, and one guy pushing a buggy at the same time. And I would generally run sort of 5 kilometers there, 5 kilometers back, and maybe 20 kilometers with the group training as well. So it was good training. I think that certainly built a good bit of stamina and strength through pushing an extra few kilos along the way.
So you also that is a great way to kind of integrate childcare and training. You also integrate your commutes with training, right? You use your commutes for training.
Well, commuting is, to most people, it's just dead time. You might be just sat in traffic or sat on public transport for half an hour to an hour, maybe longer. I'm very fortunate. Obviously, this is pre-COVID and lockdown. I'm very fortunate. My office is located to the southwest of London, and it's about 19 kilometers away. So half cycling, half running. And then as I got more invested in running, I pretty much exclusively ran to and from work. I would get the train halfway in the morning, generally run all the way home. Sometimes I would run both ways. So I had the option of running any distance really, before and after, and I would leave work at 4, and I could be home to pick my son up from nursery by 5:15. So it really didn't. It was a very, very efficient way of getting my training in. So I was, again, 2 birds with 1 stone, getting to work and training at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds really good. So what was the path, the route to home and office quite suitable for running?
Oh yes, very, very, very favourable. So going out of London, and I had a really nice route which was 70% off road. I only had about 6 roads to cross. So a lot of it was gravel paths, slightly undulating as well. So I had a couple of hills, not crazy hills, but ones where if I wanted to make an effort, there was I could integrate some hill work as well, some bits that were suitable for speed. A lot of it unlit as well, so that adds an extra element of interest in the winter when mainly commuting in the dark. So all done with a head torch. When you first start running with a head torch off-road, it can be a bit spooky. You're just running in this little pool of light. You have no idea what's happening outside. You see these little reflections of lights, of eyes here and there. You start to recognise the animal by the colour of the eyes glinting back at you.
Oh, wow.
And then if it's raining, you mainly with a head torch, you just mainly just see the rain coming down. And if it's misty, you just see a pool of light, nothing else. So yes, extra element. And if it's muddy, you get in filthy dirty. But also lucky that there's a shower at work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I got my routine pretty efficient, because there's also a dry cleaner just round the corner from the office, so I wouldn't really have to carry anything, because I get my shirts and trousers washed and ironed. I was just taking them around the corner, so I didn't have to carry clothes in and out of the office as well.
That's very convenient. Awesome. What was your first marathon after moving back to the UK?
So 2015, I ran Edinburgh.
Okay.
And looking back, I did virtually no training at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was mainly cycling and a bit of running, but I averaged 15 miles a week for the 18-week block. So I tend to track an 18-week block of training, mm-hmm. leading up to a marathon. So yes, I did 15 miles a week for Edinburgh, and ran 2:51. So I knocked a few minutes off my Hyderabad time. I think a lot of that could be attributed to it being a lot cooler, a lot less humid, and also net downhill as opposed to uphill. So there's a slight downhill to start off with, and it's just pancake flat along the coast.
Mm-hmm. So talking of the progression from there to, say, your latest London Marathon time, can you walk us through the kind of training and volume that you did over this period?
Edinburgh 2:51, 15 miles a week. That was actually less training I did for Hyderabad. Hyderabad was actually 17 miles a week, mm-hmm. but I was doing quite a bit of cycling as well. Mm-hmm. I think I was probably fitter overall when I was in Hyderabad in 2012. But that 2:51 gave me what's called a good for age entry for London Marathon. Oh. London Marathon has about 45,000 runners, but there are a lot more people apply. So I think there's maybe 10 applications for every single place. Mm-hmm. But if you have what's called a good for age time, then you have almost guaranteed entry. Okay. So my 2015 Edinburgh time qualified me to get into London, and then London I averaged 18 miles a week, so an extra 3 miles a week. So again, I really wasn't training very much at all. Yeah. I ran 2:42. Okay. Although my volume was still very low, I think that the quality of my training was probably better, and also that 18 miles a week doesn't include any cycling. So yeah. I'm not sure how much I cycled in that period, but that would have built up some base as well.
So when you say quality of training, was it like those park runs and stuff?
So a lot of people train in what's called middle ground. So they just train sort of medium hard, mm-hmm. all the time.
Yeah, tempo-ish.
Whereas what I've come to appreciate over the years is polarized training. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my running is very easy, very gentle, steady pace. But then the hard stuff is hard. So when you're doing intervals, when you're doing sessions, workouts, they are very hard. Mm-hmm. So I think to start off with, for many years, I was guilty of just running all of my runs just medium hard. You're not getting a huge amount of training benefit from that, but also you're not getting much recovery. So you can find yourself just being constantly tired through running in the middle zone. You could be doing quite a lot of miles actually, and not seeing a huge amount of improvement. And I was guilty of this until a couple of years ago, really. But obviously, I was doing more training. I was doing workouts on the track, even if a lot of my commuting was at sort of middle ground pace. So I used to frequently. I used to try and get to park run once a week. So that's a fairly hard effort, sort of 17 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Whatever. So yeah, the quality of my running, the quality of my training did improve, even if the volume didn't go up massively.
Right.
So after running 2:42 in 2016, that meant I had a championship qualifier. So if you run faster than 2:45, you were eligible to start just behind the elites, what's called the championship start.
Wow.
I think it's 3:15 for women, 2:45 for the men, and that's guaranteed. And you're running in the British Championships.
Right.
So I ran the following year. So I ran 2:42 in London in the spring, it's 2016, and then that was on 18 miles a week. Then I upped my volume to run Bournemouth Marathon in the autumn. Now Bournemouth is probably a slightly slower course. It's a bit up and down. It's on the coast, so you're going from sort of sea level up to the top of some cliffs. You're obviously not running up a cliff, but you're going up. There's some elevation in there. I knocked a couple of minutes off. I ran 2:40 there, and then the following spring, I was up to 40 miles a week and ran 2:35. So another 7 minutes knocked off my previous year.
Yeah.
The following London 2018, I ran 2:27. That was on 50 miles a week.
Okay.
Interesting about 2018 in London was that was what everyone thought was a very hot year. I think it was 22, maybe 23 degrees.
Okay.
Now for London in April, that is considered quite warm.
Right.
And loads of people were complaining afterwards. There were recommendations before the start that if you were wearing fancy dress, you should reconsider what you were wearing, and you should revise your time goals to be just slow down to stop yourself expiring on the course. But I just thought this was perfect temperature. Not one point during that race did I think it was anything other than just lovely.
Yeah.
And I got to the finish, and I couldn't understand why it was so empty. So you go past the finish line, then there are all the baggage trucks just after on the mall, just after Buckingham Palace, and it was like, where is everybody? Not realizing at the time that I'd come 13th amateur, something like that.
Okay.
So it was a 15th amateur.
In 2018.
So there were 2018.
Yeah.
There were actually, I passed one of the favourite elites, an Ethiopian, just coming past the Tower of London with about 5k to go. I think that was a bit strange. He'd obviously not had a good race, but I assume that he had some appearance money that was tied into actually finishing the race, so he thought he would jog it in to collect his paycheck. But yeah, to come 15th amateur was a bit of a surprise, because the previous year I had come 144th.
Wow, that's quite a jump.
So yeah, 144th to 15th was a bit of a surprise. And I think a lot of that was down to the fact that I was used to, not necessarily recently, but I was used to racing in hot conditions. So I was used to using various different methods of just keeping my core cool, lots of water over my head. And
So what was the time there?
that was just under 2:28, 2:27:56.
Wow. So under
And that was
230,
on,
under 230
yes,
became
and that
kind
was
of
on
normal.
50 miles a week.
Okay.
Then, so that was 50 miles a week. Then again, that autumn I ran Bournemouth again.
Mm-hmm.
And I ramped up my training again by another 50%. So I was doing 71 miles a week for Bournemouth. And I was a couple of minutes quicker again. So I was I was 2:26. So yeah, just a minute quicker for Bournemouth on a slightly slower course.
Okay.
I think my pacing, I think I got a bit carried away, and I was a bit faster on the first half than I should have done. So I slowed down quite a bit. I probably could have been a bit quicker than that if I hadn't been quite so enthusiastic for the start.
And did this trend of the volume getting better and the timings getting short, smaller, continue?
Yes, well, I've got a graph seeing the progression. It's a fairly linear.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think if I plotted it logarithmically, I would find that the training has gone up logarithmically, and the times have come down linearly. So the law of
diminishing returns.
Diminishing returns, yes, exactly. So from London 2018 to London 2019, I practically doubled my volume. So I averaged for London last year, I averaged including the taper, that 18 weeks, I averaged 93 miles a week.
Wow.
So I was over 100 miles for most of my training. And that was trying to integrate the slow stuff being slow and the fast stuff being fast.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, knocked a few more minutes off. So yeah, 2:23:08, which I was quite 2:23:08. So yeah, I was quite pleased with that. And that was 10th amateur.
Fantastic progression. But this volume, a lot of this volume is also, I think, integrating your commute into runs kind of helped build up that volume, I guess, right?
Oh yes. So, and also the polarized training.
Mm-hmm.
So the easy runs being easy.
Yeah.
Because 100 miles a week might be far too much for some people. It
Right.
might be, some people might be able to take a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on your recovery to find a training load which suits you. So with reasonable recovery, I found 100 miles a week off double runs I could cope with quite well, and I saw some big improvements.
Right.
So my commuting was exclusively running. I very, very rarely cycled to and from work, but I would do a very, very gentle 10K in the morning, so half running and half train. I'd jump on the train for half of the way to work.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a very easy recovery run done very slowly. And then my runs home would be a mixture of hardness. That was a distance, that was a volume which suited me, and I did see some good improvements on that.
Mm-hmm. And you would how would you include the intensity in those? Would you do intervals on the way home, or would it be like weekends with the club and stuff?
Yes, I would. I was generally following, for the past few years, I followed a training program by a book by Fitzinger and Douglas called Advanced Marathoning.
Okay.
And they've got various different programs on how long you want to train for and what sort of volume. Mm-hmm. So I would follow the 18-week plan, and I progressed up to the 85 plus over 85 miles a week
Okay.
plan, and that would top out at just over 100 miles a week. And there would be prescribed sessions in that. So yes, there would be fartleks, there would be tempos, there would be all sorts of things, and some of these would be hard work. So when you're running off-road on undulating trails in the winter with a head torch, with a small backpack with some clothes in, hitting paces could be a bit of a challenge. Right. But even if you're not hitting the paces, you've probably hit the same sort of intensity of effort level, because all these factors slowing you down. So yeah, I've just integrated sessions into my commutes. Try and make sure that the intense periods of the workouts don't correspond with crossing roads. Yeah. So if it might be a 2 kilometer hard, 1 kilometer easy, 2 kilometer hard, 1 kilometer, something like that. So I would warm up to a point where I knew that I would have 2 kilometers of straight running before hitting a road, and I could cross the road in my recovery period before hitting the next session. So sometimes I had to be a little bit inventive and put some loops in, and but yeah, it was I just integrated it into my commute. The commuting was also so easy because if I was at work, I needed to get home. Yeah. So I was training with a purpose. The purpose was to get home. Yeah. So if I didn't run, I could catch the train. It would be a little bit easier, but actually overall it would be slower. Run to the railway station, jump on the train, wait for the train, get the train, then run at the other end. It wouldn't save me any time. Yeah. It would just save me a bit of effort. Right. So there was also, I felt there was a purpose to every run. Not only was I training, I was getting somewhere. I was doing something useful.
Right. Not everyone could do something like that, but everyone could look at their own life and circumstances and see what ways can they use the time effectively, and how they can get the training done. I think is the takeaway here. Great. So what was your nutrition and hydration for these trainings and races look like?
For races specific, I used to take some gels. Mm-hmm. I think I've gradually reduced the amount of gels I've taken during races. I think when I first started racing, I was using High Five, because I got a selection box. It was a very good value. You get a bunch of powders and gels and bars and things. Mm-hmm. And this came with a general user guide of 2 gels 20 minutes before the start. Then your first gel sort of 40 to 45 minutes in, and then another gel every 20 minutes to half an hour. So I followed that. So I would take about 2 gels before the start of the marathon, and then maybe 6 gels during. And inevitably, I would always, and I wouldn't drink very much. I would just have a few sips of water along the way. And inevitably, I would always puke at the end. And I think that what I've realized is that when I'm running a marathon at marathon intensity, at the speed which I am now, the GI system sort of shuts down to a certain extent, because all of your blood is diverted to your lungs and your legs. You're trying to get as much oxygen into your blood and into the muscle groups that are consuming it as possible. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't go to your stomach. Also, critically, it doesn't so much go to your brain as well. So you don't make good decisions during a marathon.
Right.
I've come to realize. So I was I won't say mindlessly taking these gels, but I was consciously taking these gels following this program to try and maximize my energy stores, so I wouldn't hit that dreaded wall where you run out of glycogen and suddenly you switch from burning basic sugar to fat. you're not running out of energy, but you're running out of the immediately available, efficient, fast-burning energy. So your body just does that at a slower pace. So you inevitably have to slow down when you've run out of glycogen. So the idea is you try and stave that off for as long as possible by getting ahead on your nutrition, getting some calories in before the start along the way. But I was discovering that even though that was all worked out fine in terms of how many calories were going in, I wasn't actually managing to digest any of them. So this was just fluid and sugar, essentially sugar, just bouncing around in my stomach for a couple of hours before being rejected afterwards. So I've actually reduced the amount of gels I take during a marathon and have less gastrointestinal distress as a result.
Yeah.
So just one example, I went out for a training run the other morning, and this was a session which was set by one of the Hercules Wimbledon coaches. It had 20 minutes at half marathon effort, 5 minutes recovery, and 10 minutes at 10K effort, 3 minutes recovery, and then 8 by 15 second strides, so 15 seconds at sprints. And I'd worked out that I was going to do this along the Thames, so I had about an 8-kilometer warm up, and I worked out once I'd done this loop, and including this workout, which took me along the Thames for a decent distance, that my run was going to be about 38 kilometers long. I thought, well, why don't I just chuck in an extra few kilometers at the end and turn it into a full marathon? And so there was a warm up, there was some recovery periods, there were some hard periods during my workout, but I ran a 2:38 marathon.
Wow!
In this workout, primarily off road, with a couple of slippery, muddy hills as well in the middle.
Wow!
And I had one gel. After an hour. I had a small sip of some energy drink before I went out. So nothing to drink during, one gel after an hour. Finished in 2:38. Felt I could have, obviously I'm 15 minutes slower than my personal best marathon, but I didn't feel like I was anywhere near hitting the wall or anything.
Right.
So yeah, I just goes to show that you don't need to be guzzling large amounts of gels all the way through, or really drinking. Obviously, it was cool. It wasn't hot. It was dark as well. But so I've switched to Morton for race nutrition now. I've used them in a couple of FKTs and a couple of races now, and they're a hydrogel, so I think they're easier on the stomach. They slip down very easily, and they're absorbed slightly more slower in the stomach, and you don't end up with lots of fluid sloshing around.
Nice.
But in terms of general nutrition, I did go vegan for a bit. I'd heard about people recovering better with a vegan diet, cutting out dairy and meat as having a slightly inflammatory effect. So I thought, well, if I'm not having those, I could possibly recover quicker.
Right.
So I did it for maybe 6 months. Okay. It was a bit of a pain because I didn't want to inflict it on my entire family. It's not something that you necessarily want to. It suits small children, etc. So it's a bit of a pain cooking sort of two sets of meals, and I was only doing it to try and make me run quicker, and it didn't work. So I didn't end up running any quicker as a vegan. So I knocked that on the head. But one thing I've taken from it is I do pretty much every lunch I have a massive salad, a large amount. Yeah, so it's like I remember having these at work, people thinking I'm eating out of a dog's bowl, or or just like a big mixing bowl, just a large volume of fruit, and also filling up with veg. Veg filling up with fruit. So I don't think that could be doing any harm, trying to get lots of nutritious stuff in.
Nice. So anyway, I think typically the nutrition and hydration tends to be different from person to person, but also the where you are, the climatic conditions and stuff, right? So, but this is something that worked out for you, like reducing the number of gels that you take and switching to Morton and stuff like that seem to have worked well for you, right?
Yes, I think if I was racing in much hotter conditions, then I would need to be consuming more fluids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but we don't really have particularly hot races in the UK. I haven't travelled to a race abroad for a while.
Yeah. Now, why did you, after you have been doing well at marathon distances and cut down your time considerably to close to like elite times, 2:23 is not too shabby in your own words. Why ultra?
Well, obviously we're all in the grip of Corona at the moment.
Yeah.
And London Marathon normally happens in April. That was quickly off the cards. There was no racing happening during the summer. I was just looking at different challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember where I first heard about it, but the FKT, the fastest known time, seemed to be things which you could do on your own. You could just record on Strava. You run a known route at a time that suits you.
Mm-hmm.
Collect the evidence with your GPS watch,
yeah.
And then submit your time with the evidence for verification. And you are basically doing racing people, but not in person.
Sounds like a virtual marathon that are happening.
Yes, virtual racing.
Virtual racing, yeah.
The first one I did was a route called the Jubilee Greenway.
Mm-hmm.
And this was basically 1.5 marathons. It starts at Buckingham Palace, obviously in London, and then it heads out through some parks and along a canal for a large portion out to the London Olympic Village, and it heads out a bit further out to London City Airport, and then it goes through a tunnel underneath the Thames, and then it goes all the way along the south bank of the Thames back to the start. And I'd seen various people who'd done this. Their times looked to be well within reach. I set myself a goal of beating the previous record by an hour, which was I thought was realistic. I didn't quite get there. I beat it by 59 minutes.
Right.
But in the process, I piqued the interest of a Kiwi international runner, a guy called Paul Martelletti. He's a 2:16 marathon runner. He's a lot quicker than I am. Mm-hmm. Even though I'd actually beaten him in a marathon in October 2019. Obviously didn't have a fantastic race then. Maybe it wasn't quite a full race fitness, but we have a sort of healthy rivalry. He went out the following week. And he beat my time by 6 minutes,
wow.
Which was in some ways a little bit disappointing. But I'd set out very early in the morning. I'd encountered a couple of locked gates and things through parks. So I had a couple of minor diversions, which slowed me down a few minutes. He probably still would have beaten me, but it would have been closer. But I'd predicted that he could have taken 10 minutes out of me if he'd really been trying. So to only get 6, I take as a win. So I don't hold that fastest known time anymore. But I did for a week. And it was my longest run, by a significant margin. And that was fun.
So you ran that at 3:54 pace, that 57 kilometers in 3 hours 48 minutes. That's quite impressive for your first ultra distance.
Yeah, so I think it's good terrain the whole way. I think I hit marathon point at about 2:45, and then another hour for the subsequent, whatever it was after that.
And so you lost that record after a week, but you still hold a record for a longer course, which is almost double the distance, for 126 kilometers in 10 hours 14 minutes.
Yes, so it's funny. When I was researching the Jubilee Greenway, which was the first route, I discovered the Capital Ring as its bigger brother, and actually shares some of the same route. And I remarked to someone, "Oh no, I'm not contemplating that. That's ridiculous distance. I'm nowhere near ready for that." But exactly 4 weeks later, was it? No, I did it midweek. So about a month later, there I was off doing the Capital Ring as well. So. Yes, again, and I think I did knock over an hour off that record.
1 hour 15 minutes you lowered the record by. And I was watching the video that you made, and both these runs you ran with a GoPro, and you were talking as you ran at this insane pace and that insane distance. And I was watching the video, and you were, I think, 60K or close to 70K into the run. Your energy was down, and you were like, just another marathon and a half to go. So let's knock it out.
Well, I probably slowed myself down a little bit by carrying a GoPro, but I thought it'd be nice to document the whole thing and have something to remember it by, and another way of sharing the experience with other people. With the Jubilee Greenway app, for the majority of it, I was running about 3:45 per kilometre. There were a couple of bits like going through the tunnel and some road crossing slow me down a bit, and I did slow it down a little bit towards the end. But that was. I can talk at that speed. It's not slowing me down all that much. But then for the Capital Ring, I was maybe about a minute per kilometre slower than that. So it's no real challenge to be chattering away, insane rubbish along the way. Realised by putting it together, what silly phrases you just keep on repeating over and over again.
Yeah, but it was quite.
I suppose the weight of the camera probably slowed me down a little bit, but the actual talking, not too much.
But it was quite interesting for the viewers to look at the whole course and what was going on in your mind at various points and stuff. I think I'll include that in the show notes. I think people would find it quite interesting to see what's going on at those distances.
The gradual physical and mental decline.
But awesome. It is insane distances to even think about. 126 kilometers, 122 kilometers at that pace.
The interesting thing, I was talking about the body's GI system, so it's shutting down at certain speeds.
Yeah.
So this was something I quite carefully considered while planning my runs, Now that it's quite easy to work out equivalent paces. There are various websites online. Daniel's running formula is one. Well, there's a simple formula. You put in a distance and a time, and it'll say, okay, well, if you can run 10k in this time, you should be able to do 5k in this time, a marathon in this time. Obviously, it's not going to be 100% true for everyone. Some people will be better physiologically towards the short stuff, some people better towards the longer stuff, but it will give you an idea.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you start going much longer, that whole thing kind of goes out the window, because you do need to keep fueled.
Yeah.
So I knew that it wasn't so much the speed I was running at that was going to be critical. It was a speed which I could sustain while digesting food.
Right.
So I picked a sort of arbitrary time, thinking, yes, I think that's a speed which I think my body can sustain, not only for X number of hours, but also I can take on board fuel and digest it at that speed as well.
Mm-hmm.
With a few stops as well for topping up water. Also, these were both unsupported.
Right.
So I was stopping. I didn't stop at all actually on the Jubilee. I just took a couple of soft flasks in a pack to drink. But on the Capital Ring, I stopped maybe half a dozen times to fill up water.
Mm-hmm.
And I had Morton powder, so I would take a flask and put some powder in it, fill up with water. I'd scoped out various different public taps and things along the route.
Right.
So if you put in my time and distance into a pace calculator, it reckons I'm way off physiologically what I'd be doing for a marathon. But you have the whole fueling and GI system to consider along the way.
Right.
So it's a slightly different way of planning.
For ultra distances, definitely.
Yes.
What goes on in your mind for races that long? It's like 10 hours, 11 hours on your own. I
think I was listening to podcasts actually on both of those. Awesome. What was interesting on the Jubilee Greenway, I was using my watch for navigation as well, mm-hmm. but I had my cycling computer with a backup route. So okay. I knew that I had the potential for encountering some locked gates. I wasn't entirely sure when various different parks and gates were going to be opening. So I had an alternative route running at the same time on my cycle computer in my bag, and that was actually talking to I think via my phone to my headphones. So when I got to one part of the route, my cycling computer was just talking me through a diversion, saying, okay, left onto blah blah street, right onto such and such a street. So the challenge in navigation is a good distraction for some of these. But I think one of my lowest points on certainly the Capital Ring was a very boring flat section where it was impossible to get lost. So there were no distractions.
Right.
There was no inclines. It was just tarmac. But I knew I needed to go 5 miles along here, and then turn off. So yes, the mind does strange things to you. But yeah, I had the distraction of podcasts. I've got a hilly 50-mile race in April, mm-hmm. and that is my qualifier for a 100-mile race in May.
Wow! So 80 kilometers and 160 kilometers.
Yep. I want to go as quickly as I can, which means shedding as much weight as possible.
So I'm guessing no GoPro will be there.
No GoPro for this. Probably no headphones. I've bought a 35 one on the required kit list. You need to carry a mobile phone and a jacket and various things. And I've had my scales out, so I've worked out what my lightest various bits of equipment is, and I've bought a mobile phone which weighs 35 grams.
Wow.
As opposed to the 200 and something of my iPhone. So I don't think there'll be any podcasts. So I think that, I might go slightly mental during this 100-mile race. Is the cost of going a bit mad without a distraction of music or podcast worth the weight saving? I'm not sure. We shall see.
We'll see. When is this 50-mile race?
The 50-mile is in April, and that's the South Downs Way 50. It's the second half of the South Downs Way on the south coast of England. And then the 100-miler is along the Thames from Richmond, which is on the outskirts of London, all the way up the Thames to Oxford.
Okay. So are they partly trail and stuff?
They're exclusively trail.
Oh, awesome. Great. I mean, all the best for those. Hopefully you don't go mad without the company of podcasts, and hopefully you'll go faster without the extra weight of the GoPro and stuff. Great insights into both the marathon distance and ultra distances, Richard. But how do you balance the demands of hard training and personal life? Like, how do you get enough sleep and stuff?
I'd say pre-COVID lockdown, it was quite easy.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to get to work.
Yeah.
I would have to get home from work, and it was a very small time consequence to run that.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the weekends, I could get the vast majority of my training in during the week. Weekend runs were a bonus. So if I could do park run, or I could go out on a training run with my club mates on a Sunday, that was a bonus. But that was bonus miles. That was fun miles. And if I could take a child along, that was great. However, now I've been working from home since March. I haven't been to the office since March. I've had a couple of work trips. I'm currently on a work trip, but it's slightly more difficult to justify a trip out to run when there's no actual purpose apart from just training.
Right.
So I'm starting that from the house, and I'm coming back to the house X many minutes later. I haven't achieved anything apart from a run. So integrating that into a routine while not ignoring family duties. I say duties, they're obviously just things which I do. It has taken a bit of creativity and compromise.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things which I've compromised on, I think, is sleep. Because I used to look at my training, and I was very good at getting my 8 hours of sleep, and I do benefit from a good amount of sleep. And also my training was split into 2 runs a day. 2 runs are a lot easier to recover from than 1. So I could easily get 30 kilometers running in, split over 2 runs, easily recovered the next day. One of them could be easy, one of them could be hard, recover no problem. Whereas to do that without the commute is a bit more of a challenge. So ironically, now I'm working from home, you'd have thought I'd have lots more free time. But I'm actually getting up a lot earlier now than I used to. So I used to get up at 5:45, 5:45. I'd be out of the door by 6:15, and I would run, and I would be on a train about 7:10. I'd be in the office showered by 8:00. Whereas now I get up at 4:30. I'm out running before 5. and I'm home by 7, which is by the time the rest of the family's getting up to help with breakfast and getting the kids ready for school and nursery and drop-offs and things, before then starting work at 8. So it's, and then I'm not heading out later in the day either, because my son finishes school at 2:30. So when they were both at nursery and being collected at 5ish, I could sneak out for an hour after finishing work before pickup. But now that's not an option. So I'm getting 2-hour runs in most mornings starting before 5 a.m. And that run I spoke about earlier, where I did the full marathon, I was up at 4, so I got up half an hour earlier because I knew I was going to get a longer run in. And again, so I was out the house at about 4:15, but I was home before 7, having run a marathon.
Wow.
But if you're getting up at 4:30, working backwards, your 8 hours, it's not very often I'm asleep by 8:30, unfortunately. And that doesn't leave much time after dinner and bath time, bedtime with the kids for any other thing. Once you've tidied up, done the washing up, and got ready for school clothes out the next day, for much free time. So
can you sneak in a nap somewhere in between, like a midday or something?
Very occasionally. So I tend to have Monday as a rest day. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I'll sneak in a lunchtime run on a Monday. So I might have a lie-in on a Monday, so not get up till 6:30. And I might sneak in a lunchtime run on a Monday. But napping isn't really, not really viable, unfortunately.
Great.
Unless I fall asleep while reading a book to my son in bed. Certainly been times where I've been reading a book and I'm sort of drifting off and realise I'm just talking rubbish, and he'd be like, "Whoa, Daddy, what do you that? No, that doesn't happen. What are you talking about?"
He would call you out. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice. But still, you're managing all these crazy stuff with family and work in all sorts of conditions. That's great, Richard. It's very inspiring for a lot of us. Any advice for some of the working athletes, some of the listeners, on ways to get better at sport while taking care of balancing all these?
Well, I think it's very much a question of priorities. Mm-hmm. How important is your training? How can you maximize your efficiency? What can you afford to give up time-wise? If that's a case of not going out to the pub with your friends, if it's getting to bed a couple of hours earlier to improve your recovery, or to liberate that time not spent in the pub or watching television, to get up earlier in the morning to go out training. That could be one aspect. I do think it's important that you don't turn into a completely one-dimensional being. My wife might argue that I take my training too seriously. To the detriment of other things in my life, and she may have a point. Is dedicating 15 hours a week to running a good use of time? That's debatable. What could I be doing? What could I be doing that could be considered more useful in that time during the week? I'm not sure. Lots of things, I suppose. So it's balancing priorities and being efficient with your time. There are the easy things to do, improving your diet, improving that's very easy. But being disciplined, it's very easy to just slump down in front of the telly and watch a film or something. would that time be better spent doing something else?
Right.
So I listen to a lot of podcasts. It's very rare that I'm running without listening to a podcast. So to a certain extent, I'm hitting two birds with one stone. I'm getting my entertainment at the same time as my running. So one of the things at the moment, I'm not sure when this podcast is going to go out, but the Vuelta a España is currently underway. So listening to the cycling podcast when I'm running, various other podcasts. So I'm keeping abreast of things. So it's time management, I think is the key, and compromising. What are you willing to compromise on?
Yeah.
To fit in the necessary training.
Yeah, definitely. It's a case of prioritizing what you want to do. There will be quite a few compromises in terms of your friends might be out partying, and you might not be able to join them if you have to get your sleep in, enough recovery, and also taking care of the family commitments, right? Great tips, Richard. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Now you are in Bahrain on work, so you were able to take some time out for the podcast. I appreciate that, and thank you for all your insights.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been great to catch up.